Do you shoulder press often, doing a lot of overhead movements, but your shoulder starts to bother you? If that's you, I'm going to show you a few steps you can do to first evaluate your range of motion, and if you're limited there, correct that range of motion, and then also some modifications you can do while you're working on getting that perfect overhead position. If you're into that, make sure you stay tuned. Let's get it started with the first part of the sequence, and that is going to be the assessment portion. Can we actually get our arms overhead without compensating? But first, if you like this video and you want to see more videos like this, make sure you smash the thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And the reason why we want to have good overhead positioning is, or at least have enough range of motion, is we don't want to compensate when we bring our arms overhead. So when we're pressing, we don't want to be leaning back and cranking on our low back. We also just don't want to force it and start cranking on our shoulder with not enough range of motion. It's just not going to be efficient, and you'll probably just get hurt in the long run. So the first thing we're going to do is the assessment, then we'll go into some corrective movements and stretches to help regain that range of motion, and then we'll also go through some modifications in your workout so you can still continue to train even though you might not have that range of motion quite yet, but you will. So let's get it started with the assessment. So we have to lean up against the wall, and I like to bring my feet off the wall just a little bit, bend the knees, and keep the low back as flat as possible on the wall. This might be a little bit tough for some people, but do your best. Also bring your head back, tuck the chin, arms out in front of you, thumbs up, and then slowly bring our arms up until you can reach the wall. That would be passing the assessment. So let me know down in the comments if you can actually hit the wall or if you get stuck early like this. So imagine, or maybe your shoulder is just a little bit on the tighter side. Maybe you get stuck right here, and the only way you can get to the wall is to compensate by arching your low back. It's all good if you can't, so if you get stuck here, we will work on some movements so you can get there eventually and soon. So let's go to our next part. So we did the assessment and we didn't quite get to the wall. I'm going to show you some movements that you can do to help improve your overhead positioning. And the first thing we're going to do is use a foam roller, and we're going to arch over. And this will also be great if you do pass, and just good maintenance as well. So still do these movements if you did pass the test. It's just going to be really good for your body. So what happens with our overhead positioning is we need to make sure that our T-spine is very mobile. And if we get stuck in this position, which is a very common position nowadays, we're always sitting, we can get a little bit stiff in that mid-back, the middle portion of the spine. So let's round out, and if we bring our arms overhead, it's very difficult to get our arms overhead. But if we can get in a good position like this, where our back is a little bit straighter, it's a lot easier for our arms to go overhead. So we want to attack that mid-back. So I have my trusty foam roller, and we're going to work on that middle portion. So put that right on the middle part of the back, somewhere between the shoulders and kind of the belly button is a pretty good range. I like to place my hand behind the head, elbows close together, and then make sure you tuck your chin. It's going to be very important because a lot of times when we arch over, people just crank on their neck, and we're getting all the motion from our neck and not our mid-back. So keep that chin tucked, just like this, and then we're just going to slightly arch over the foam roller. It might not look like I'm going that far, but I'm getting some great extension right in that T-spine. So here, tuck the chin, just like this, and you can roll up and down. Again, I'm just arching over this way. Imagine if I just extended my back or my head back. My T-spine's moving the same amount of distance, but it makes it feel like I'm going further if I tilt my head back. So again, keep that chin tucked. You can spend about 30 seconds to a minute here, and that will be great just to help mobilize the T-spine. Now let's go into a stretch to kind of work on it a little bit more. All right, so let's hit our next movement. We hit up the foam rolling, which was really good to create some extension and get our T-spine more mobile. Now we're gonna do a mobility exercise / stretch over here on the bench. It's a tall kneeling T-spine extension on the bench. So this is going to be great for our lats, again, our T-spine, and great motion to get overhead with our hands. So let's grab a PVC pipe. If you don't have one of these, you can use a broomstick. And to be honest, you don't even have to have one. You can just pretend you have one. So we're going to start on both knees and place our elbows on the bench. If you don't have a bench and you're at home, you can use something like a couch or a coffee table, anything that's around this height. We're going to place our elbows on the bench, and our knees are just about underneath our hips. And all we're going to do is drop our chest to the floor and push our hips back, just like this. And then bicep curl too. So in this position, we're getting a good stretch on that mid-back. We're dropping the chest to the floor, getting a good stretch on that mid-back and T-spine. And then as we bicep curl, we're getting a good stretch on the tricep and also down into the lats. So this is what it looks like again, just like this. And that's really going to help with stretching out the lats, mobilizing the T-spine. It's really going to help get our arms in that overhead position. About 10 reps here is pretty good. And now, as you're doing these exercises and you're improving your range of motion overhead, we still want to keep training, right? We don't want to take any breaks just because we can't get our arms overhead, but we want to modify what we're doing at the gym to minimize kind of the issues with the shoulder, all that tension in the shoulder. So I'm going to show you some modifications you can do in your workout to continue training while you improve your overhead positioning. If you made it this far, we are going to go over some modifications for your shoulder press or overhead press. And one of the most common things you can do just to take some pressure off of your shoulder is adjusting your bench, bringing it back and forth to a high incline to upright. And I'm going to show you kind of what the assessment would look like if you were just using a bench. So imagine we're doing the assessment that we did earlier in this video, and we're going to bring our arms overhead, and let's say we got stuck here. So imagine doing a shoulder press in this position with only that range of motion. You get to here, and you have to arch your back, lean back, and then just cranking on your shoulder just to bust out these reps. So one thing you can do instead of doing it poorly is just adjusting the incline on your bench. So we can bring it to maybe a couple notches down. So now we're at a high incline. So it's not totally upright, but it's pretty close. But look what happens. Look what happens to your overhead position. So let's say we're doing the assessment again. This is where we usually get stuck. But now, because we have the high incline, as we lean back, now our arms are perpendicular to the floor, and it takes a lot of pressure off of the shoulder. So now we can get in such a better position here, still work our overhead positioning and work our shoulders and our front delt. And as we improve our range of motion, you know what we have to do? All we have to do is bring the bench up a little bit. So let's say we've been doing the foam rolling, we've been doing the stretching, and our overhead position gets a little bit better, but not quite there yet. All we have to do is bring the bench up a little bit. We have that new range of motion that's getting better, and now we can start doing our presses in this position until our assessment is perfect, and then finally we can bring the bench all the way up into that position. And that's one of the ways you can continue to train without having a perfect assessment. So it's very important. A lot of clients have told me that people tell them to not do or not work out while they're continuing to improve. But I say, screw that, make sure you continue your training, just be smart about it and modify until you can pass the assessment. And that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed and you learned something. And if you did, again, smash that likes or that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe, and then go down into the comments. Let me know what you want to see in the future, and I'll do a video on that. All right, I'll see you guys later.